Becky.
Okay. I'm going to tell you a story about some dogs that I have had, and a surprise, because the theme was pet surprises. So back a long time ago, I was an animal control officer in Colorado in the 70s. And I went to answer a call, and I found a puppy in a shoebox in an alley, and it was a little white Spitz puppy. And she was blind. She was born blind. She actually didn't even have any retinas, and that's why she was born blind. That was my first blind dog. So I learned to live with a blind dog. She lived to be 15. And in addition to being blind, she was also an epileptic, and she had a vestibular lesion where she circled to the right all the time. So, but she was very normal otherwise, and she was a little brat, and she was a biter, and I mean, she had great aim. She could, from here to there, get you right on the ankle, so I had to manage her because she was a little bit of a brat. But I fell in love with this dog, and I named her Bee because I allowed her to be. And I kept her, and she became my sidekick for many years. After I got done, I was an animal control officer. I finished college, and then I ended up going to veterinary school in Colorado State, in Fort Collins is where I was. I ended up going to Hawaii right out of vet school to work for the summer for this horse veterinarian that was on Oahu. And I had to take the blind dog, Bee. She was with me. She had to go with me. And we had to have quarantine because they didn't have rabies at that time. So she had to stay for 4 months under quarantine. And I got to keep her at the clinic I was working at because we were an approved quarantine facility. She became famous because anybody that would try to go up to her would try to bite her, and she was just a mess. And you learn to live with blind dogs because if you change the furniture or you change anything, they go jumping in the air to jump on the chair, and then there's no chair. But she was fine. She got along fine. Another little story, before I moved to Hawaii with Bee, some friends of mine were taking care of my animals while I was away, and they took Bee for a walk, and we lived along this river in Colorado and had a big bridge, and you would forget that Bee was blind. Because she'd walk right alongside you, but my friend didn't realize you had to kind of keep the leash taut so she knew where she was. She walked right off the bridge, but she had a harness on and everything was fine. It wasn't a bad ending anyway. Anyway, we moved to Hawaii, and her eyes, she didn't need her eyes, and she developed glaucoma, so we removed her eyes. She had and she did fine, but she had she face with no eyes, but she was fine. She was much happier because the glaucoma was really painful. Anyway, she had this long hair, so I used to shave her, and when her hair grew out, it looked like she had mange, because some of them would be long and some of them would be bald and short. But she loved the beach, and when she would go to the beach, here's this blind epileptic circling dog at the beach, and she loved the beach because she'd feel the waves, and she'd go out, and then she'd try to beat them on the way back in before they'd splash on her. She was a blast. And we'd be at the beach playing in the water, and people would come along, oh, how cute, ooh, So anyway, so she had a great reputation for many years in Colorado and in Hawaii throughout my life. And she passed away around 15. So then while I ended up staying in Hawaii for many years, and I went to work for the Kauai Humane Society. And we had this call. I haven't gotten to the surprise yet. This is my surprise. So I had Bee was my first blind dog experience, 15 years. We got this call. We used to do animal control on the island of Kauai. I actually ran the Kauai Humane Society. We did animal control services, so we responded to injured animals and stray and lost pets and enforced the laws on the island of Kauai. So there was this call that there was a dog circling in the middle of the road, and sure enough, it was a dog, an older dog, and she had been hit by a car, and she had lost her eyes. Her eyes were it was bad. We had to remove her eyes. But she was very happy after that because they were very, very painful. And I ended up adopting her because here I am, a 15-year-old blind dog experienced person. And her name was Stella. Stella! And I used to do that with Stella. Anyway, her name was Stella, and she was an older dog. She'd had multiple litters, but she was a smaller dog. She looked like a typical, stray little mixed breed, probably had a little Basenji. She was really ugly, actually. She was this brown dog with big bad ears, no eyes. But she, too, got along really well, could do it. So in Hawaii, more so than any other place I've ever lived, possibly because I lived around horses, I was a horse person, there's rats everywhere in Hawaii. People don't realize this when they go to paradise, but rats flourish there. And this little blind dog would get mice and get rats, and the cat would just sit there and watch her. She was amazing. She could get him, no eyes, no nothing. So Stella would go to work with me sometimes, and sometimes she wouldn't. And Stella's worst experience in life was the sound of a fire, a smoke alarm that had lost its battery. You know that sound? Beep, oh God. She would just flip out. So I don't know, I can't remember exactly how it happened, but again, blind dog has to be managed, always on a leash. They can't see, right? She can't see. And I would walk her every day up this hill where I lived, around the park and back, so she knew it. But for some reason, I had left the screen door unlatched. I was taking a nap downstairs, and that smoke alarm thing went off. And I didn't really think much of it. I just went and banged it, and you know what you do. You almost break them every time they do that. But anyway, I got it off the ceiling, pulled the thing out, got it stopped, went back and took a nap. So I get this phone call from my office. This is my surprise. At the Kauai Humane Society that does the stray pickups, right? I'm the director, right? And I get this call that Stella is at the shelter, and that Stella had walked up the street across the main road, and somebody had found this blind dog. And when they took her to the shelter, of course, the whole staff says, "Oh, that's Dr. Rhodes' dog." But totally embarrassed, right? So that was my surprise, that my blind dog was found running loose on the island of Kauai while I was taking a nap. Stella lived to be a good old ripe age as well, and I'm very, very partial to blind dogs, and they're wonderful. If you haven't had one, I highly encourage adopting one. Thank you very much.